Okay, good day ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me for my AutoCAD Plant 3D and Navisworks webinar. So, as you've probably guessed, this is going to be about Plant 3D and Navisworks. Just a quick little thing I just wanted to mention here. This Plant 3D, if you've got 2019 or earlier, you may be a bit confused because the A icon is now red, where it used to be blue. So, don't get confused with that. Navisworks, also its colors changed. Green, if I remember correctly, to blue. So, introduction. Who am I? I'm Quinn Kennedy, application engineer, part-time, trying to take over the world. Just a little bit about my background. I do also hail from the sugar industry, got a bit of water behind my background as well, mostly to do with wastewater, and then also some general manufacturing. Here. So a bit about our agenda today, what we're going to be looking at. So, going to have our intro, how to export to Navisworks, the object enablers. These two kind of do go hand in hand. Whoops. These two do go hand in hand, and I'll explain why in a bit. Some tips and tricks that we're going to go through. In Navisworks benefits, clash detection, etc. And then using some Inventor models for Plant 3D equipment. And then our outro. Cool, that being said. So, firstly, when we're needing to export out from Plant into Navisworks, we're going to have to run a command. Unfortunately, they haven't given us a nice little button or anything in our user interface that we can click. You're going to have to type this command, which is nwc out. Now, it's important to note that you have to have Navisworks installed in order for this command to be available. Whether it be any of the other Navisworks, but generally we're working with manage at this stage. So nwc out is the command, and as you can see on the bottom left, is just what you type out normally. You can either type in your command bar, if you've got your dynamic UCS on, you can type it out there, and then hit enter. When you do hit enter, the screen on the right should then pop up, and you can then save it somewhere. It's just important to note that it's going to save as a NWC, as you probably would have guessed from the command. There is a save as type dropdown, but that's, I'm afraid, not going to be too handy in this case because it only allows you to save as an NWC. Okay, so once you find your location and you hit save, it will then save it in that location, of course. Now, the next section, the reason why I'm saying these are kind of linked is because when you are saving something out from AutoCAD to Navisworks, you're going to have something that should already be pre-installed called the object enablers. Now, most of the time you won't need to worry about this if you follow this procedure that I'm about to tell you. And or otherwise, what's going to happen is when you open up that NWC in your Navisworks, it's going to look like the image that I kind of pilfered off my one colleague's blog. It's going to look like this here on the right. And what's basically happening here is the object enabler, which it's kind of like a translator. It hasn't translated the data correctly, and if you look across, you can see we've got this like weird looking wireframe on our tanks, and you can see the nozzles haven't really joined, and then all of your other fittings like your elbows and a few of your other fittings will not be shown. Now, most of the time this is not because of our object enablers being broken or something. This is actually just because you haven't done this little trick. Now, if you actually go and you either go to this link here at the top, or easier, you ask Uncle Google and you go, Uncle Google, object, AutoCAD Plant 3D 21 or 2020, whatever it is, object enabler, it will bring you probably to this page. The Autodesk AutoCAD Plant 3D 20, whatever version you're on, object enabler, and then you'll be given with a whole bunch of downloads. Now, something that a lot of people do, or should I say they don't do, is they don't read the text at the top. So it says here basically in where this block that I've put, that if you're working with something like Plant 3D specifically, you want to keep the model open first in Plant 3D. Open it up in Navisworks as well while you've still got Plant 3D open. I know this is a bit strange. Open it up in your Navisworks, and then you should see it gets rid of this problem. What do I mean by that is that if I were to go to my Plant 3D, as you can see, this is my plant model, and we would type out NWC out, enter, and then I'm just going to overwrite my prior one and save it. Yes. We want to keep this model open and then go into our plant. I'm going to save what I was doing here. Open, change it to my NWC, and now it's open correctly without missing any pieces like elbows or any strange bits and pieces. Everything is there, and what you see here is actually referenced directly from my 3D model. So that's what I meant about that you want to keep both of these open, and then you should have a valid export. And that's basically what we were talking about over here with the object enabler. It's kind of important that you do this, or at least make it predictable. That's being said now, you've noticed that I was talking about the NWC over there. Now this NWC is a bit of an interesting thing. So that is a cached file, so it's referencing the original model. You'll notice that there's actually several different formats, most notably NWC, NWF, and NWD. NWF is basically a whole bunch of Navisworks files that's combined into one unit. So this is what the whole append and merge things about, etc. So you can create kind of a collaboration of all of your models together. Still, but those are the Navisworks references. But they are still references. If you save something, like file, save as, and you come down over here to the bottom, you can save it as an NWF. So the set files, you can see what it says over there. You can also save it as an NWD. Now what the NWD is it's basically a standalone file. And what's quite interesting about these standalone files is that if you take a look, they are very, very small. So if you were to send somebody, an NWC or an NWF, and you can see they're also quite small, but remember these are referenced files. So if you were to send somebody these, they probably won't be able to open them very well or very easily. If you send somebody though the NWD, everything is compacted into one. So it's actually very, very handy for sending people plant information. Send that to them in a Navisworks NWD file. And it's also got a few other advantages that I'll be going through a little bit later. So that's just a quick thing about these different file types. Moving swiftly along. Some tips and tricks. So I've kind of have already explained one of my tips and tricks, which was about the whole using our plant correctly. Going back here. So one of the things that you may have noticed is that when you are moving things around, when trying to move around, or when you've selected something and you're using a different tool, like maybe move, rotate, or anything else, if you hit escape or something, or do whatever you want to do, you notice that I've still got whatever I had selected last, especially like move, rotate is one of the worst ones I've found. You still have that selected as your selection system. You notice it still wants to move things around. I can't just click on it and try and do something or try and do something with it. It's a little bit difficult to explain, but basically it's because it remembers that my item tool is currently set as the move transform. We don't have it set as the selection item. Now, there's a quick and easy way to do this. All you have to do is hit Control 1. My Control 1's not wanting to activate for some reason now. See, if you hover over it, we can actually see it says Control 1. So it's not like I'm going mad or anything. There we go. So now I can actually select correctly. Maybe a bit of a difficult thing to see there. But basically with our Control 1, it returns us back to the select system over here. So if you had it on something else, it would default back. Now, of course, it's trying to make me look funny because it's just working correctly now. So Control 1 is a very nice way of jumping back to our system. Also, next thing is use your properties. Now, what do I mean by use the properties? Now, I've purposely closed my properties palette, but this will generally be open. Is that if we go to our view and home, and we go to display, not view, and go properties, you'll notice it says nothing's open. Now, this is the reason why I was talking about the select first, is because when we select something, now remember this was pulled over from Plant 3D, because if we go into our AutoCAD here, we can actually go and we can take a look and see what information is actually in here. You can see our said description, very hot. Our tag number, the facing type of the flanges. I use the DIN standard, so it's not raised face or flat face, etc. It's type C. So you can actually see, you can't really see the flange over there, you can just see the gasket symbol. And you can see the end types, etc. and the pressure class. So that would be whatever information you currently have on the system. You can see over here my pump, I've got all my pump information. Generally, by the way, it will only pull in fields that's been populated. Now, I'll get onto that a little bit more when I get to the Inventor side, because it plays a lot more of a role there. But it's only limited by what you're pulling in there. So that is our properties palette. This is very useful, and like I said, you can find the properties on our display on the home tab, and this gives us a lot of information. Carrying on. We can also, if you wanted to play around with your materials. Now, a lot of people, when they're wanting to go and they're wanting to make their Navisworks look a little bit nicer, just for like demonstration, etc., or just to show people different things, they have a problem with trying to find the materials. Because if you look over here, you can, if you look on a viewport, you may be able to find the mode to change as to what it looks like, and you can change the lighting a little bit. But the one problem that people have is trying to apply materials, because materials are actually a little bit hidden. And if you go to your render and you click on Autodesk rendering, you've actually then pop out the materials palette, and then you can go to your materials and say, okay, I want to go to, let's say, metal, scroll down. Oh, and by the way, if you want to get these little images a little bit bigger, you can use a drop down and go like 64. Sorry, that little drop down over there. And then you can go to your thumbnail size and change your thumbnail size to larger or smaller depending. Quick and easy way, you can already see over here, if you're familiar with AutoCAD, etc., you probably have already know how this works. But basically, this is showing materials in our library, and this is showing materials over here where our system is currently what is currently in this active document. So to get something in here, you can either select something off your materials that's in the document, or you can just drag and drop off from your library. And as you can see, this is now taken on that. It'll only really look 100% when you do an actual render. At the moment, we're doing what's called hardware rendering, which is meaning that it's using just your graphics card, your GPU, to render what is currently in your viewport. I'm not going to go too deep into this rendering thing. I just wanted to show you where this was hiding, and this is kind of something I get asked quite a bit. And then afterwards, you can do your rendering, ray tracing, etc., etc. If you switch that on, you'll notice it starts making nice, pretty pictures. I haven't really set this thing up for rendering. That's the reason why. It'll take a little bit of playing around to get that nice. Cool. So that is where to find your materials and that. That is like I said, it's something I get asked sometimes. using a viewport to take notes. This is one of my favorite, and this picture over here is demonstrates it quite nicely. Because if I go and I'm going to open up one of my other ones that I've already taken some notes on, NWD. If you go to your viewport tab and you use your drop down, you'll notice that I have got several different views already in here. So I've got a view on flange, a view, and an animation. I'll get to the animation a little bit later. So at the moment, I just got view on flange. And if I click on it, it's just look on the flange. But if I go to the next one, view, you can actually see this note. What's quite interesting is if I navigate off it, you'll see it's not actually a picture. It's actually literally just a view on that area. If I jump back to it and go view, jumps back there. Just a bit of a pro tip. What you can also do is you can go to your view tab under Windows, and you can go and you can select the actual view over here. Comments. There we go. Comments, and we also want our saved viewpoints, because when you put these on, you can firstly see some interesting information here, comments, and then also replies to comments. So view, if I click on view over there, you can see number 1. Why is this here? It is either in there. So this is actually very easy to put in, is that if we go into our review tab and you are navigating, whoops, sorry, there's my space mouse that decided to pop up there. If I was to, let's say, select this pump, and I were to say draw a line and say, actually even better, I'm going to show you guys something here that's quite interesting. So if I went into my selection tree, and this is this little thing on the side here, you'll notice that our Navisworks is broken up into various little sections. So we've got our complete model, 3D, we've got our subsections, but what's quite cool about this is because of the way that Plant recognizes its items, our plant pipe runs are actually separated. So these would actually be my my actual pipe groups. So my quadruple 0, 0, 0, 0. If you look, that is my inlet, also with its support. My line 1000. But the reason why I'm bringing this up now is because I made a mistake on purpose. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Because if you take a look over here, I have got a flange that is on the wrong pipeline. That shouldn't be there. So what I can do is I can say over here, wait a second. All I'm doing, by the way, is I'm clicking once at the base and once to where I want the arrow to be pointing to, and I can say put some text in, and I can say, why is this on the wrong line? Okay, and you'll notice this automatically has made a new viewport. I didn't have to create a new viewport or anything, although creating a new port is creating a new one yourself is very easy, but this would automatically create it for you. And when I'm jumping there, you can see with my pump, I pointed it over I just had a little picture, sorry, a little arrow pointing there. My view 2, I've got one pointing there. So this is actually how I use Navisworks quite a bit, is I will go and I'll actually mark it up using this little viewport tool. And it is really powerful because I can say this is an NWD, send it off to another engineer, etc., whoever I want, and he can actually go navigate around the 3D model, find something, and then right on the 3D model, say, draw a picture in that. And then afterwards, he can send the 3D model back to somebody. And they just go to the viewports and say, oh, look, okay, there's something that needs to occur over here. Why is this here? And you can even give a reply on it. Comment, add a comment. Why is this here? This has to be here? Question mark. And you can keep on adding to these comments as they're going through there. So it's actually a very powerful tool. There is also a lot more that you can do in here. But that, in a nutshell, is one of the reasons why I use Navisworks personally. That, and also it's really small file size. I mean, it's small enough to quickly and easily email most little plants, just for quick things around the office, etc. So that's one of the major things. So this, use the viewports to take notes, amazing thing. I love it myself personally. Oh, just one little note that you might see is that on my presentation over here, you see it's got a little box. Now, this is a little interesting thing because you'll notice on my 3D, I don't have that. The reason being is that on our home tab, we've got a little thing over here called links. Now, this is not very well documented in some cases. If you click on the links button, it actually shows you all the little links. All these little things floating around. They're all doing something. So, and if I were to click on one, it jumps me to that. So that's the notes link. If I were to click on one of these others, I'll get to this one in a second. But if I were to click on one of these, that's a views link. So it's showing me a view. You notice to get out of these views, all I do is I can just orbit around using either my space mouse or using shift middle mouse, however you want, or even using the view cube. If I were to click that one, that is actually a selection set, which I'll get onto in a second. Okay, so, oops, sorry. Previous. I'm sorry, I've got a left clicking problem it seems today. So the next thing I just wanted to show you is linking of the docs, like PDFs, web pages, that type of stuff, which can be very handy because that is the reason why I've got a little link over there. So if you actually take a look, I have a hover over there, it actually shows you the name of it. So it says PDF, pump PDF. So if I were to click on it, you can't launched on my other window, but basically it automatically opened this up. So I can go and take a look. So this was one that I got off the KSB website, and you can see it gives you all the data for that specific pump. That's a pretty cool thing that they've got. To actually do this, and by the way, another way to follow this link. Oh, you notice that my pen now is stuck in pen mode. So now if I hit Control 1, this is what I was talking about. Now it jumps back to using my selection set. Now I can happily click things. If I didn't leave it that, it would have now wanted to assign another window with another viewpoint, etc. So if I were to select my pump now, right click, I can go to links and I can add a link, edit the link, or otherwise where you see this pump PDF, that is actually the link that I added to it. So what I could do is hit escape here, and I'll quickly show you guys on the other pump. If I select the pump, right click on it, and I'll say links. You notice the pump link isn't there. I'm going to say add link, and the pump link I'm going to say is KSB pump. It's going to say link to file URL. I'm going to use the browse button. Okay, I know it's in here. The reason why you can't see it is because my file type at the moment is stitched to HTML. If I use the drop down, you'll notice these are all the things. So you could link to an audio file, so you could scare somebody by having a screaming sound go off, or a video. I'm not going to say what you want to do with the video. Another Navisworks, an image file, etc., etc., and then a document. I'm going to select document, and there's my PDF. I select it and go OK. Now, here's a little pro tip that we found out a while ago, actually now, was that at the moment, it's giving you a complete file path, which can be a bit problematic if you are working over networks or giving this to other people, etc. If you've got the PDF in the same area where the model is, what you could do, you can kind of switch it to a relative file path by using a dot backslash into it. Set as a hyperlink and go OK. Now you'll notice that all of a sudden I now have a little link over there. Notice if we switch the links off, they disappear. Switch it back on, it appears. And when I click on it, it launches the PDF document again. So yeah, you can also do that, like I said, for linking to web pages and a whole bunch of other stuff. You can also, by the way, get to this if you select the, get to the links if you select the object, and in your properties palette, you go to hyperlinks, and this will show you there. If you right click in the properties palette, you can follow whatever is set as the default link. Very handy little trick we figured out there. Oops, let me get that back into view. As you can see, I've got lots of little things now popping up. So that's linking in a PDF. But like I said, it can be done with web pages or any of the other documentation. Next thing we're going to quickly show you is this walking around. Now, walking around is also pretty useful because it can give us a nice view of the plant and how things are coming together actually in it. What we're looking for, what we're doing, etc. So, what do I mean by this walking around? Well, I'm just going to quickly close some of these sections here just to make our screen a little bit clearer. Now, if we were to take a look at this, we can happily just navigate around, but it doesn't give us a clear view of what we're looking at. So I'm going to switch the links off. What we can do is we can go to our viewpoint and we can switch to a walk mode, and under our realism we can switch on collision, gravity, crouch, and maybe even third person. Now you'll notice we get this little man. It's not very happy with me at this stage. But yeah, so what I've done basically is I've told him to descend all the way. And with realism, it's basically switched on, is it going to collide with the model? Does gravity exist at the moment? And if I run into anything, is it going to crouch? This can be pretty funny. And third person, first person view. That's, so do you looking from behind him or you looking from his eyes? I prefer first person because this gives us a better view as to what we're working with. Now, as we're walking around, we get to look around our plant. This is actually very helpful when you've got a 3D mouse, as you can see, my 3D connection. And then I can take a look actually at what's going on here. Aha. If I right click on something, I can even take a look at stuff. In this case, it probably would be a good idea to have my view panel open. Oh yes, actually let me put the properties on. This way you can actually even take a better look. If I were to look at my tank, I'm just right clicking on it so that we can quickly get a view. So this helps put things into view. Entity handler, hyperlinks, etc. I'm just going to close that for now. And we can take a good look at things. By the way, if you do have things like ladders and stuff, you can generally climb them, but this one bugs out for some reason. He goes a little bit nuts, which I'll try to show you. If I get close to it, you can see. Yeah, I don't want to make everybody seasick. But basically, you can also go up a lot of these cat ladders and stuff. So this is what I meant about you can actually take a walkthrough. This is very nice for showing clients and customers or other personnel what this thing is looking like, because a lot of us can understand 3D and 2D, and we can view it in 2D with a flat screen, what we're working with, but a lot of people can't visualize it the same. This is a very nice visualization tool. Oops, and once again, I'm left click happy. So that is then without walking around. Last but not least, I'm going to quickly show you another tip which I found very handy, which is the search and select tool. Now, unfortunately, with Navisworks and Plant 3D, there's a few things that don't come through as nicely, but we can kind of rectify this with certain things. Like you'll notice that when you're bringing something in with the selection tree, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to show this stuff a little bit later, like not from the get-go, is because when it brings it in, it'll bring in a lot of things on layer 0, because these are the different layers. And then only our pipes and stuff are set to various layers that we can work through. But there's ways to fix this, such as using our selection sets. So what these selection sets are is kind of like pre-made setups. Let me quickly go back to my viewport and quickly turn off my walk to fly mode. and go back to control 1. So control 1 gets rid of all my issues. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, if I go to find items, I can go into my find items and I can say, okay, anything in here, I'm looking at, let's say, any items themselves, and I can search for a specific property type. And in this case, CPP, because those are our pipes. I think it's actually ACPP, sorry. Find all. And that is all of our piping. So when we hit, we can also, by the way, export that, and we can export that into an XML file. Cool. Once we've got all those selected, we can actually then create a selection set from it. Sets, manage sets, manage sets over there. And then you see we've got our piping selection set. This was actually one I already created. What you could do is, once you've got the selection set made, or selected, should I say, or otherwise, let's say if you wanted to create a new one, like maybe you could manually select those two, and say save selection, and you could say pumps. So when you click pumps, it selects both of the pumps in one go. But what's quite cool is that, let's say something for piping, for instance. This is very handy because if we use this little tool, which is the selection inspector, you can click on it. That's what I accidentally clicked just now and popped up. This is now set up to show me some information that I already wanted. So what's its AutoCAD class? Valves, elbows, tees, pipes. Whatever description it's got. The length of it, if relevant. So this would normally be relevant to the pipes. And then material codes if you've got those assigned in AutoCAD. So, by the way, if you did want to customize this, you could go quick property definitions, and then you could actually bind this using quick property definitions over here. So that does take a bit of playing around to try and find out exactly what you want out of it, but normally it would be something from the AutoCAD if taken from plant. So it'd be AutoCAD, and then what property from AutoCAD do you want to pull? This may take a little bit of working around to try and figure out exactly what you want, but it should be pretty straightforward as to what class it is, descriptions, lengths, and material codes. Like I said over here, you could put maybe pressure class and go OK, and then you'll notice the pressure class has changed. So most of these are pressure class 10. You can then save your selection sets as a new set. Oh, this would be, sorry, if you'd selected or showed item or deselect items, etc. from there. Once you're done as well, what you can also do is you can export your data to a CSV file. You can actually see I've already got one there, and say save, replace, and then when we browse to it, we can actually see our CSV file over there. Where to open it in Excel? Okay, my separator is not correct at the moment, so it's not separating it, but basically it would normally separate into a proper Excel sheet. And then that's that you can use it to pull off pivot tables, etc. and that. But when you're getting to that level, it's probably better to do this in plant itself. It'll give you far more control. Same as when I briefly mentioned quantification. Quantification works a lot better in plant itself, just because of the way that Navisworks works here. So that would be creating our selection sets, just to make our lives faster, easier, and we can pull off more data from it. Or maybe somebody who doesn't have plant, maybe they can then also use it to pull it off. So that then is what I just wanted to mention about our search and select. Next thing is our Navisworks benefits. Things like clash detection, timeliner, quantification, and animation. Like I said, quantification is a bit of a null void. So what do I mean about the clash detection? Well, it's pretty cool because in here, if I were to go and run a clash detection, so clash detective, and I were to select it, it pops up this menu, and this could be a little bit confusing for some people, a little bit strange, but what you're basically doing is you're comparing one section of the model with another. Firstly, when you go add, it's going to give us a whole whack of different information. So test 1, and we can then see by different tests which is new, which is active, been reviewed, resolved, etc. At the moment nothing is showing because we haven't done one yet. Not really too worried about that. I'm just going to say, okay, I'm going to say these two by just left clicking on them, and I'm not going to change all these are just more property modifiers that we can do. So is it going to look at lines, any points, anything like that? And then what type of clashes is it going to try and find, and also what tolerances. We can actually set the tolerance up to maybe 0.1 millimeters, so 100 mils. That's probably too much, so let's put it to 10 centimeters. No, yeah, 1 millimeter. Any links that it's going to link to? No. So yeah, we're not going to work with that at the moment, and I'm going to say run test. Now you'll notice I got lots and lots and lots of red and green, because what's happening here is I'm getting a hard now fail or clash between my plinth and my floor, because if you actually take a look, my plinth projects through. So it's just because it hasn't been. So what I could say is, no, this is not actually an issue, and I can use my drop down and I can say it's approved, and you'll notice up over here it says approved. Now what's pretty cool about this is, remember what I said about this this is an NWD, my apologies. So what you could do is you could send this out to another person, give it to somebody like an engineer, etc., and they could happily run through it and find what these issues are. Remember, we did also have an option to put a tolerance on it, so they could quickly run through it, find any real actual clashes and any things that are like, no, this is not an actual clash that we're going to have to be worried about. And in this case, you could go approved. Also with sorting things out, you can make your life a lot faster and easier. You'll notice that as soon as I'm going approved, it is also updating who's approved it via the username, and then when it was approved by. There's also a few more bits of information. You can see where this is going from. Approved. Approved. I'm actually going to jump all the way down here to the bottom. There we go. We can see that there is something clashing over here, something with this pipe. I'm actually trying to find a nice clash. So these pipes for some odd reason are clashing. There we go. So here we've actually got a nice clash that you can visibly see of some of our steelwork intersecting itself. So here we can then say, wait a second, this is active. You know, we need to do something about this, or otherwise is it reviewed? You'll notice that our information then pops up over here. What you can then do is you can import your clash tests to XML files and send it off to somebody else if you wanted to send it to another program or another person. You can then also assign people if you've got that already set up, and then that would then assist you with that. So different people could work with different things, or be told, hey, you need to work on this specific, or be notified of the specific issue. Once you're done, you can then always rerun the tests, and then you'll notice that if you rerun the test and it hasn't been solved, it will still stay as active, but there's nothing new here. But you can also see these other ones that are issued for review and the other ones that's been approved. Cool. So it's pretty nifty what you can actually do with it. That's also changed my lighting for some reason. Viewport, and it's changed to full rendered. Cool. So that is about our clash detection. We've also got another cool thing called our timeliner. And don't get me wrong, by the way, there's a lot more you can do with clash detection. All I'm trying to do is give you guys a brief overview as to what is possible between Plant and Navisworks. Please keep that in mind. There is a lot more that you can do with this. So now with our, oh goodness gracious. So with our next section, I'm going to quickly speak about our timeliner, which is another cool thing that we've got here. Timeliner. Now, I'm just going to quickly save this and open up my second model that I've got here. Oh, I had a picture there that was broken, so it's not too happy with me. Timeliner. Oops, no, I opened the wrong one there. My apologies. Where's that? Oh, it's the NWF, that's why. Just showing you that there's a difference between the different file types. So in this NWF, this is my linked file because I had a few things it's linked. That's the reason why it was giving me an error there. So what I've got here is I've added in my, when I click Timeliner, this lovely little Timeliner window pops out, and I've got tasks. And what I've done is I have selected something. Well, in this, I've created a new task, and then given the task a name, and then also given it a date. So you give it a start date, a planned start date, a planned end date, an actual start, and actual end. So this is actually very nice for trying to timeline your actual project, how it's going to work from point A to point B. And what do I mean by this is pretty cool, because when we're going to simulate, I was clicked on my new task, that's why. Delete task. That's going to get unhappy with me, I leave it on. You do also get quite a few these other tools. I'm not going to go too deep into this. Now, if we're going to our simulate, what I'm going to do with my simulate is I can play around with my simulate very similar to a DVR. I can just drag my bar. I'm going to drag my bar to about here. The reason being is because I set like 2 weeks for the slab. I'm just going to get it roughly in the middle. So it's on pause at the moment, and I can hit play. And it can actually show you, watch the date as it's going by. You can actually see how things are coming together. So at the moment, you can see the tank and the pumps are what's busy being installed. Well, that should be installed. I can hit play. Next is the steel work. Next is the heat exchanger, then the piping and everything, and that's where it ends. You can also play it in reverse if you wanted to, or otherwise stop the whole process and then restart it from the beginning. See what I mean about this thing taking forever? I'll drag it over here. You can just scrub through your timeline. So this is actually a very handy little thing that you can take. You can also, by the way, if you wanted to change settings, etc., you change. Sorry, wrong one. You could change the way that it displays. There's quite a lot of different things you can do. And then once you're finished, you can actually export it and then render a short video of how the system is coming together. Very nice to try and see as to how it is. Plus also what you can do is if you do actual start and actual end, you can then see, was your system as predicted? Did it come together as predicted? Because maybe in future you can do things to improve any pain points you might have found. So that's quite a nice little thing about timelining. There's a lot more that goes into this, and you can also take it further. The next section I was just going to talk about now is this quantification. Now, unfortunately, with the way Plant is working inside Navis, this quantification kind of breaks down a bit, but normally we do this in the in the Plant 3D side. But in quantification in a nutshell, what it is it takes the items inside your model, and then you can break it down and pull off reports basically, and literally as it says, you do your quantification on the actual model. So you can see what items are in what specific areas, how much concrete do you need, how many doors do you need, windows, etc. Like I said, in Plant, unfortunately, it does break down a bit. It can be used, but it's a bit of a schlep to get it working correctly. So that is basically it for what I'm going to mention about the quantification side. The next thing I've already mentioned was the Autodesk rendering, which is pretty cool because you can actually do renders in Navis itself. Last but not least in this case is going to be our animator. Now animator is pretty cool. I love the animator personally because you can get very interesting things done with our animator. But with our animator, you'll notice, sorry, closed it there as well, is that people like to do it, I think, the difficult way, because the way that they want to do is they want to set up their views and then they want to use keyframe animation, like they're going to add things in, etc. There's a much easier way to do things. I'm going to quickly jump back to my first NWD. No. And if I open up my animation screen, you'll notice I have got this thing over here. Now, if you were paying attention prior, you would have realized, or I did actually mention this, that there was an animation in our saved viewports. Now, this actually makes our lives a lot easier because with our viewports, we can save a whole bunch of viewports. If I go to my viewport screen again, blonde moment, sorry, Windows, cool. If we go into our viewports, we can actually then save a whole bunch of our viewports. It's going to get to it there via the manage. We can go to our viewports over here, right click, and we can add a new animation in here. And then with that, we can say, okay, I want to go and drag this view, remember the one we made for our pump, into animation, and this view into an animation. Oops, I've dragged it past it by accident. And this then actually quickly makes a little animation. You can go in here and you can say, oh, okay, I want to do keyframe animation by creating a new scene, etc., and then going from there. So add a scene 2. Add a camera from current viewpoint animation. So basically what I'll do is it will then be able to add in using this animation set that we've created. Now, I've already got one set up here where I've basically taken several different viewports, and all those were just screenshots that I took around there. And then it automatically created this. That's pretty cool because when I click on it, we can then play the animation. And this thing gives us this lovely little tour around here. And by the way, these little black nodes over here, those are our keyframes. So it's actually used our little views over here as our keyframes. This is why I said you just need to right click, add an animation, give it a bunch of viewpoints. By the way, to quickly create a viewpoint itself, if you wanted to create a quick viewpoint, you can just click save a viewpoint, save a viewpoint, save a viewpoint, save a viewpoint. That's quick and easy as that. Drag these ones out. And then create the animation from there. It's pretty quick and easy to actually do. Oh, that's why I didn't want to play over there, because we didn't have that one. Oh, we're not on scene 1. There we go. So what we could do is we can easily and quickly create a whole bunch of animation sequences. And that's also a nice little quick tool that you can use in our Navisworks. Yeah, those are kind of like my main things that I personally feel that Navisworks is really cool with. One of the last things I'm going to show you now is going to be the Inventor and Navisworks with our plant equipment. Now, unfortunately, this is not a very smooth process. It's complaining about that thing again. And what it allows us to do is have more higher quality of models put directly into our Navisworks, because Navisworks, it already chops down the size of our models quite significantly. So what we can do is, if you take a look at our pump at the back, that is one that I've taken and I've actually pulled that off the KSP website, and I've actually, this was also, by the way, from Inventor, but it was from Inventor into Plant 3D, but also what I did is I culled out a lot of the details. So if you take a look, you can't see the little mounting holes, and there's been a lot of information that's been reduced from there. Where the Inventor one has got a lot more information, a lot finer detail actually already embedded into it. So, how do we do this? It's actually pretty simple, but it's not very clean, I'm afraid, in that all you have to do is go back to your home, pinned, and then you can merge in, and you just go and use the drop down from file type to Inventor. In my one, this is in my downloads. The downloads, KSB. And in this case, I'm just going to use the main system. Now, you'll notice that it puts it there into my origin. Now, this is the problem with it. It inserts it via its own XYZ coordinate system. So there is a way around this, in that you can go and you can specify its XYZ, but you create a separate IAM file. So if you've used Inventor before, basically what you do is you create a assembly within an assembly, and then you move it to the correct XYZ location in that assembly. It's a bit of a, not the cleanest trick, but it does work. And then with that, you'll have all of your Inventor information from it. So if I go back to my properties, if I click on it, it actually shows me my Autodesk information. Unfortunately, this was a model that I grabbed off the net. So it is the KSB pump that I specifically got for this. And if you take a look at any of its information inside its iProperties, that information has what's been brought across. So description, step APs 203, this could be any information here. If we actually go to our selection tree, sorry, if I select on it, you can actually see this information being brought across here. If it was a full Inventor model, it will have a lot more properties in it. Also, one thing you have got to note is that it will not pull through blank fields. It will only pull through populated fields, hence the reason why it looks like there's a lot less information there. It's because it hasn't, these fields weren't populated. Even the physical field wasn't populated. So it hasn't pulled through that information. So if it's not pulling through information, first you check the model that you're pulling from, make sure the information is there, because unfortunately it's not magic, it can't pull through nothing. And if there's nothing to pull through, it's not going to pull through no information or a blank field, it's just going to drop that field completely. So it would be a good idea to maybe populate it with some information. And as you can see over here, I actually did it the way that I mentioned. I gave it its proper XYZ coordinate, moved it into position, lined it up nicely, and as you can see, it just gives me a better, nice, higher quality definition to the other plant model that came through originally. Sometimes it's not too clean and you have to kind of get it right, but that is unfortunately a little bit of a schlep that you're going to have to face when using it there. The good information is you can get a lot more higher quality information from it. So, my observations that I've got. Navisworks is a brilliant tool, especially if you've got Navisworks as your in your package already. So if you've got it from one of the design suites or in a big company and you've got multiple licenses, etc. If you've got Inventor, Plant 3D, Navisworks, etc., you lever them to their best possible use. With Plant 3D and Navisworks, just for the ability, like I said, personally, I use a lot where I will work with people and we'll take the little snippets, we'll do the viewports and write notes to each other. This works beautifully in these type of situations. It is exceptionally powerful with communication and finding things out. Because yes, you can do these things as a 2D representation and you can show people information in Plant, but the models can be quite large and unwieldy and they need a specialized license. By the way, this can also be done in Navisworks Freedom. They can do the markups, the viewpoint markups. So review, they can do this in Navisworks Freedom, save it and send it back to you. So that you've also always got a copy of what was sent around. And then they've got the full 3D model with the markups and everything right there at their disposal. Because sometimes with the 2D view, it can be very difficult to take a look maybe underneath something or around something. Maybe something just doesn't look right. And then you could write notes back. That alone to me is one of the most key points and one of the reasons why I love Navisworks myself. There are its other things, like I said, like its timelining feature. its ability to manage information, move around, send information, just taking a look around the model. So these are some of my observations that I've seen with it. So with that being said, with me waffling on for so long, do I have any questions from people? Okay, I don't see anything coming through. No good. No, all good, sorry. No good. Cool. Okay, guys, if you do have any questions or anything that you want to like to ask us, please get in touch with one of us. As you can see, we're throughout the country in Johannesburg, Cape Town, Port Elizabeth, and Durban. Please don't hesitate to drop us a mail. We'll always be more than happy to answer questions and get back to you with that. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you have a wonderful day. That's me out. Thanks. Cheers. Bye.